Welcome to the World Awaits.
Travel tales to inspire your wanderlust.
Welcome back to the World Awaits. How are you all?
Hi, everyone. Hey, Kirsty, just a reminder before we kick into it all that our latest giveaway is a copy of Dale Campisi's book, Naarm, Melbourne Neighbourhoods, Stories, Walks, Miscellany. Take a listen back to last week when Dale was our guest and we were digging through the layers of Melbourne. So if you would like to win his new book, drop us a line at hello@theworldawaits.au to win a copy. And back onto your week. Kirsty, how was it?
Oh, that's such a great prize. So get in there, people. Drop us a line. Yeah. We also love hearing from you. Do email us at that hello@theworldawaits.au. So my week's been super busy. I have literally just got back as we're recording this from the Luxury Travel Collection Showcase in Brisbane. So the collection is owned by Flight Centre Travel Group, and it's a new global membership collection of luxury travel brands. So it's about a year old, and January last year, and includes the Travel Associates Network in Australia and New Zealand and Scott Dunn in the UK. So basically how it all works is that the collection provides travel advisor members with access to some really high-end products and experiences and itineraries. So that partnership means that the advisors were partnered with suppliers. So then they're obviously armed with a whole heap of new intel. And by suppliers are really incredible, like all the major cruise companies, Viking, Emma Waterways, amazing product, Pedant. And so then the advisors have got all this information and they're armed with, and then they can provide that information to the traveller, to us, the traveller. And if you want to understand a bit more about it, you can read my story at carryon.com.au and we'll put a link in the show notes. But one part of the weekend, can I just tell you, Belle, that was a real highlight, that was just amazing, was that we were flown, a whole group of us, the suppliers and the business owner advisors and a couple of media were flown by charter plane to Longreach in the Australian outback, which I had never been to. And some people may have heard about it, but it's where you'll find, among beautiful glamping accommodation and some incredible places to eat, you actually find the Qantas Founders Museum. And here you can see some of really rare planes. There's like an open air museum of like just old planes. And they include the first 707, which was the very first passenger jet in Australia, and there were only 13 of them made. And this plane, when it retired, it was also fitted out as a private jet, luxury jet, and was used by the Jackson 5. And you can go inside it and have a look. It's incredible. And there's a photo of Michael Jackson in there. And you can also walk out on the wing. So they harness you up and you can walk out onto the wing of the jet. So if you want to see me doing that, you can. And also so that you can do it as well, because what surprised me in Longreach were the amount of incredible tourism experiences you can do out there in the outback. So check out my Insta at Kirsty Wrights and see if it's something that you might be interested in doing. But it is such an incredible place and a really great way to get an authentic Australian outback experience.
I had no idea. I did not expect that you would say Longreach was a great place for restaurants. I got to say that was the take-home surprise, as well as the Jackson 5, because there were 5 of us in our family, so we kids were known as the Jackson 5 when we were little.
What?
My little brother was born. Then my little brother came along and ruined it, but yeah, absolutely. That would have been so cool. Can you imagine the disco set? I bet they had a mirror ball in the plane. Oh, that would have been forced. So while you were romping up and down on the wing of Australia's first passenger jet, I stepped out of my usual circuit, boom tish pun intended, because I went to the Australian Grand Prix in Albert Park here in Melbourne. And it was insane. Look, I've got to say, lucky for me, I was in the Red Bull Racing hospitality tent. And even better, my plus one was Diane Bortoletto, who is another podcaster. She has a podcast called And Away We Go, which is all about F1. So check it out and we'll put it in the show notes. So having Di beside me, she was super knowledgeable about the structure of racing, the difference between F1 and F3. I've got to say the F3 is much, much louder. We all had safety earplugs. And she knew every driver and their statistics and the movers and shakers of F1, such as Gunther Steiner, who we saw, and 5 times world champion Mick Doohan on the motorbikes. and his son's now in racing. We got to see the junior Red Bull drivers, Yuki Tsunoda and Isaac Hadjar, who I've got to say, when you look at them, you're like, oh my goodness, you're about 18. How does your mum feel about you jumping in a big car like that and in the van? And because that,
Pretty proud, I can imagine.
I think proud, and also they're earning pots of money. But Isaac Hadjar did run, like he literally drove out. First time he's been on the race course and straight into the side
there
of the
is
track and
that.
got toted off. That was a little bit, I don't know.
Yes, it would be, it'd definitely be nerve-wracking.
Oh, just terrifying. The poor kid was crying his eyes out. But Di was so fast at spotting all of the big names like Charles Leclerc, who's the driver from Monaco, and of course Oscar Piastri, who's the Australian one who everybody was totally cheering for. The Netflix series Drive to Survive has been a key driver, pun intended, of the popularity of F1. And because you can visit courses all around the world. And I didn't realize until I toted it up how many GP circuits I've been on recently. Like in Abu Dhabi, I was there a couple of years ago doing a story, and we went into the course and there was a 14-year-old, because it was a story about what kids can do in Abu Dhabi. And we all took our children, and one of them was a boy who was about 14, and he got to do a hot lap. Far out, his mother was like dying, but she was like, oh, I don't know if he can do it. And we were like, he can do it. But you do a hot lap where you go with a driver around the track with a professional driver. And then in Singapore, I was actually there the day after the F1 had finished. And to get to the airport, we had to drive along the track because it's part of the streets. The taxi driver was going crazy. And then in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, I was there when the EF1, which is the electric version, was finishing a couple of years ago. And I actually drove around the track in Monaco the day before it started in a friend's vintage convertible. Shout out to the fabulous Bruce for that spin. I have to say Monaco might just have the most beautiful track because it's a street circuit, because Monaco is just too small to even fit a track in, like it's such a tiny principality. But it's right beside the sea, and while you're there, you can drop into the casino and the Museum of Oceanography, which is where Jacques Cousteau ran that particular incredible museum for 30 years. But what I loved about the Melbourne event is that it is so Melbourne. Like, it's so Melbourne. All of the restaurants and the snack bars and the bars you had in between the Ferrari and the Porsche stands. You can get a St. Ali coffee. The Esplanade Hotel in St Kilda had its own setup there. It was just gorgeous. And you can even get a croissant, some Lune croissant, the best croissant in the world, according to Anthony Bourdain. And trivia tip, the Lune croissant founder, Kate Reid, was actually an F1 engineer before she pivoted to become a pastry chef. Did you know that?
Oh my gosh. No, I did not know that. That's incredible.
Incredible woman. Yeah, she's always been connected with the F1 in different guises. A disclosure, I visited the Australian Grand Prix as a guest of Vegas Tourism, and the Grand Prix returns to Vegas in November, as well as places like Monaco and Jeddah and Singapore. But in Vegas, it's a night track, so they race at night, possibly because it looks even better in the evening light. And also it's more convenient for the city because they close the strip off, and apparently even the famous Bellagio fountain stops for a couple of hours during the race. So wouldn't that be just
amazing? So check out all the things we'll put some links in the show notes, and you can check out all the things that you can do as a traveller around those when you're visiting those tracks that Belle mentioned. And there are 24 races around the world in 2025, and Melbourne was the first of the season, and now it's off to Shanghai.
Off to Shanghai. And speaking of Asia, this part of the world is definitely a winner for Australian travellers at the moment. New research from travelinsurance.com.au has found more than 4 million Australians plan to visit Southeast Asia this year, with our faves being Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia and Malaysia, expecting more than 40% more travellers to hit their shores.
And the research says that we're dumping the pricier European travel for Southeast Asia, and they suggest 5 Asian alternatives. So the first one was, instead of hitting the club scene in Ibiza, they suggest that you head to Bali, which doesn't have the same price tag.
Yeah, the flights as well as the clubs as well. The beach club scene in Bali is astonishing. I've done stories on the scene around Uluwatu down in the south, where you've got world-class DJs, incredible scenery. All of these beach clubs either overhang or are right on the beach. I would suggest checking out 180 Day Club. That's the one that sort of started the floating breakfast trend with this clifftop infinity pool, or going down onto the beach El Cabron for some Spanish inspiration. And if you're looking for history, the research also suggests in swapping London's Westminster Abbey for Tokyo's ancient temples. And then instead of taking the tube, which is grotty, you would get a beautifully clean Japanese bullet train.
Yeah, amazing. Who doesn't want to be in Japan? It's still so popular at the moment. And also this, I love the suggestion. So for cultural heritage of Prague, the Vietnamese city of Hanoi serves up rich history in the old quarter. And this one wasn't actually recommended, but I'm throwing it in. I reckon head to Hoi An's ancient town because I love it so much. And it's such a great example of Southeast Asian trading port dating from the 15th to the 19th century. And the colours there, like those gorgeous just sunshine coloured buildings and with the beautiful bougainvillea spilling over the top, the maroons. It's just such a beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, you wouldn't get that sunshine in Prague, that's for sure. And if you have a craving for the Greek islands of Mykonos and Santorini, but you don't have the wallet for it, they suggest Phuket as an awesome trade-off. There you get the white sand beaches, plenty of luxury resorts, but the cocktails are a fraction of the price.
Yeah, and can I suggest Twin Palms, Montezor and Kamala? That is just a stunning spot, and because it's a much quieter spot of Phuket, you don't get, and you clearly won't get the overcrowding that you'll get in Santorini, but you can still do all the things. So they've got amazing markets and there's some gorgeous beach clubs nearby, beautiful restaurants, and you can walk along that stunning uncrowded beach. And if you are staying there, you can actually hear the waves rolling in, crashing on the shore while you're lying in bed.
Yeah, absolutely gorgeous part of the world, you're right. And for glamour, skyscrapers, and luxury shopping, our old friend Hong Kong is back on our radar, which is pitched as an alternative to Monaco. Look, I love Monaco. I was there about 18 months ago, but it is brutal on the wallet. It is just so divine with the Lamborghinis everywhere. Lamborghinis are almost passé there, right? On a casino and that experience. And look, that's not to say that everything in Hong Kong is budget priced, but it does have one of the world's cheapest Michelin star restaurants, and its night market food scene is definitely budget. And of course, you don't have the European plane ticket to contend with as well.
Yeah, so if you do want to head to Southeast Asia, and some of those sort of suggestions might tick some boxes for you, and certainly save a lot on the wallets. And those recommendations come from travelinsurance.com, and we'll put a link in the show notes. This week, I'm chatting to Keith Sproule, the Executive Director of Abercrombie and Kent Philanthropy, about some of the 55 projects in 24 countries he oversees, including one where they train women across Africa and the Middle East to run their own bike shops so they can financially support themselves and their families. We also touch on some other groundbreaking projects A&K is involved in and how you, the traveller, can get behind them. Welcome to the show, Keith.
Thanks very much. Happy to be here.
So great to have you on The World Awaits. Let's start by tell us a bit about your background and how you came to work for Abercrombie and Kent.
I was doing a lot of international development work with the World Bank and with our U.S. Agency for International Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and the World Wildlife Fund. So I'm a little non-traditional in the travel space, but I actually had known Jeff Kent, and when we talked about the prospect of Abercrombie and Kent really making a difference in the community development world, it was just a natural match, and that was 10 years ago.
Wow. So let's start by talking about what philanthropy actually means and why it's important to the world of travel.
There's a lot of terms that get referenced that relate to this idea of travel philanthropy, whether we call it sustainable travel, ethical travel, socially responsible travel. It all ties back to this idea that when we're visiting a destination, there's a host community that are receiving us, that have been the stewards of that landscape, often the stewards of national parks, reserves, sanctuaries, or built heritage. And the idea that the travel industry can support those folks that have had that responsibility for generations so that we're improving lives and livelihoods in an equitable way as part of the travel experience. That's a little bit of a long answer, but that would be my general thrust, that it's about balance and equity and giving back.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's cover off some of the projects that A&K is involved in. The one that I have written about in the past and come across a lot and absolutely love is this initiative to train women in bike shops. So can you tell us, how did this idea get started and where did it start?
It's one of our most successful programs. And let me start by saying that the impact reaches the household level, and that's what makes it so distinct. So we fill a container with used donated bicycles. We try to get as many mountain bikes as we possibly can. There are so many bikes sitting in people's garages and backyards and at grandma's house or the attic that are going to go unused, or they end up in a landfill. We collect those and ship a container across to a village outside of usually where we have a lodge, and then cut it up and make it into a literal bike shop. We cut up the container. But beforehand, we train women, and always women, how to repair and maintain bikes. And the deal is, ladies, these bikes and your training are your starting capital. Every bike you sell, set aside a portion for salary, a portion for spare parts, business licensing, and save a big part to pay for your resupply. We will find you more donated bikes, but the ladies pay for their resupply, the next container, international shipping, customs, and delivery. And you know what's crazy? It works. They kill it. Given access to opportunity, these women are selling bikes to families that are using them for alternative transport, to get to the river to fish, the field to farm, to carry water, to get to school. And those families are investing in alternative transport. So it's not airdropping items on folks. It's not a giveaway. It's definitely developing a business model run by these women that also contributes to recycling from the donor country, whether that's the US, UK, or we filled a container in Australia. We have one bike shop, women run, in Zambia that has resupplied 16 times. We get about 500 to 550 bikes in a container. They've sold over 8,000 bikes in that local community. And so 8,000 families have access to alternative transport. And what's really special are the ladies are ferocious entrepreneurs, and it's so fun to hear them talk about their lives now compared to when they started 9 years ago. They all own homes, the kids have been to school, they're proud, strong parts of their local community as business owners.
And a lot of them have also, in some cases, I was reading, have, because they've been, say, for instance, widowed, and they are left with nothing. So tell us about some of these women's stories, and where they've come from.
They're for sure, they're all single heads of household. Many of them have illness and disease that they're living with. And it's tough on a widow. It's tough on however a woman is trying to raise a family, if she's by herself, to find a real income, consistent income. Most of them not coming from an exceptional educational background, but they can learn to repair and maintain bikes. And I'll tell you what they learn so quickly: the value. They know which of the newest container of bikes we've sent, which ones are going to be the most valuable, which ones they're going to get a premium price for, a medium tier price, and they don't let it go for free. They're pretty ferocious in this process. So yes, they do come from challenging backgrounds, and we not only are providing access to alternative transport for thousands of families, but those women's lives are given a whole new lease on life.
And how do travelers get involved in the bike shops? Can you go along to the bike shops, or how does a traveler get involved in that?
Anyone can stop by. Usually they're in close proximity to an Abercrombie and Kent owned lodge, but many other lodges and tour operators bring guests to have that moment, experience that moment of pride as the woman comes out. One of the ladies from the shops comes out and begins to tell the tale, gives them a tour of the facility, and if they'd like, they can certainly go on a bike ride. There's always organized trails around these villages. Nothing more fun than to follow a business owner, one of the women, and see the school and see the medical clinic and wave to the traditional authority that often comes out to see these folks riding by. It's a very real, personal way to experience village life in these settings where we operate these shops.
And so it's expanded now, hasn't it? So it's in a lot of countries in Africa and the Middle East. And so is that continuing, that expansion?
Step by step, we're definitely looking at additional expansion. When we establish a shop, we're making a very strong commitment to those women that we're not going to go away when they're ready for a resupply. And so last year we shipped approximately 4,000 bikes. So with each new shop comes an additional commitment that if the successful, we need to fill another container. And so we did open last year a second shop on the edge of the Bwindi impenetrable forest in Uganda. It's a really fantastic area to go mountain bike riding. But I'll tell you, one of the successes there, I just met with the ladies and I said, in your first year of operation, what was the most memorable part? And they all answered, learning to ride.
Oh.
Because culturally, they never rode bikes. And in fact, none of their neighbors did. No one in these communities, the women, none of them rode bikes. And so there was a whole cultural shift that had to take place for their success. And they said they were out demonstrating to people how to ride after they had learned. There were a few occasions when they had a stone or two thrown at them in the process. Now it doesn't happen. Now you see young girls out there riding. So there was a whole other element to this that is a very cultural component, but it's very fun to hear them report back about a year in how they feel successful.
Yeah, amazing. So you own the shops and then they run the shops? Is that how it effectively works?
Oh yeah, we set them up. It's their business. And so early in, the two toughest decisions they have to make, and these are hard fought decisions. What are they going to name the shop and how are they going to design the uniforms? And what color are the uniforms? And that's a really important part of the pride that they feel in the ownership. It's truly theirs. We do lend some support with some of the financing up front, of course, and we lend support for them to keep their accounts organized. We often have to support with opening a bank account. These are folks that are not coming from a background where the bank are accustomed to seeing them walk through the door. And so we lend that level of support on the organization business side. And then as they carry on 2 or 3 containers into this process, they got it. They are solidly the entrepreneurs running it.
Amazing. I love that project so much. What's another project that you're doing that you're really passionate about?
There's a school in Tanzania, in Arusha, for disabled children and special needs kids. And we designed that school and provided the original support to establishing it for young girls that were deaf with severe hearing impact. And there were 7. But we realized it's greater than that. So we expanded the facilities, and slowly over time, the government Ministry of Education filled it with 120 students, all with the range of special needs for quite a range on the spectrum. But a year ago, when we went, we had built the school, but also dormitory, kitchen, dining hall, playground. A year ago, there were 15 albino children. And it's tragic, but unfortunately, in rural Tanzania, folks that have albinism with the skin pigmentation are vulnerable to have their limbs cut off. And so these children were being placed in the school at the dormitory for their safety. And when we realized that we could provide safe haven for that special population, we said, let's expand. And so literally 2 weeks ago, we opened a very significant expansion of the school to be able to house more children with special needs and more children with albinism, to give them refuge in that setting. And so that's a personal, I think it's a program that's helping those in greatest need in a way that I feel very fortunate to be able to contribute to.
Absolutely. And does some money from travelers contribute to that? How is it by the money that they're paying to staying in the nearby properties?
So every guest that travels with Abercrombie and Ken, whether it's, on a safari with us or on a boat with us, there's a portion of the sale that goes toward philanthropy, and we build an exposure to our work. So we try to give guests an understanding. What are the educational delivery challenges, the medical delivery challenges, the job creation challenges that this community faces, and what are we doing together to make a difference? In organizing a visit to these projects in their itinerary, we do open the door for the guests to also contribute. I feel very fortunate to represent that we operate at a very high standard, a gold standard, that if a guest is interested to donate, 100% of their gift goes to the project of choice. Abercrombie & Ken covers all the operational overhead for the folks that work for the philanthropy division. A guest donation, 100% goes to the project.
Yeah, incredible. And your partners, the people that you're partnering with on your tours and your experiences, they're all obviously supporting in some ways towards the efforts because they have to be involved, right?
NK is a little bit unique in that we're vertically integrated, so that in addition to being a tour operator with companies in the US, UK, Australia, and elsewhere, we have a lot of destination management companies. And so very often you're going to get received coming through customs by an ANK representative, getting in an ANK vehicle, staying at an ANK lodge, or getting on a boat. And in that process, everybody ties into philanthropy. Feel very proud at the level of staff engagement in every sector, every division. They get excited about the work we're doing. For most, it's work we're doing in their neighborhoods. And so they feel very proud about this aspect of the company.
Amazing. So what's next? What are some new things that you're looking to work on or developing and which areas? Is it still in the same area of supporting incredible work that you're doing and supporting community and individual people and children?
Our expansion plans for 2025 include South America. We're going to be opening a new program in Argentina. We've got a very significant program in the Galapagos that is in the early stages of launch. We are buying a boat that will deliver a marine-based experiential education program to every 12-year-old, every seventh grader living on the 4 inhabited islands in the Galapagos. The tragedy is that so many of these kids look out on a national park in one of the world's magnificent national parks, but they have no real understanding of the beauty of it. They don't really understand why people are traveling from around the world to experience their backyard. And if so, we're buying a boat that will be dedicated to delivering that marine-based experiential learning moment for all those 12-year-olds, 500 on an annual basis, so that they too understand and they get the interpretation with a professional naturalist. And in the process, we're going to expose them to the travel industry and what job opportunities there are on these boats, on these liveaboards. And that'll be a significant part of the economy for a very long time to come. And we hope in this process that we're giving them insight. It's that old mantra. You can't love what you don't know. You won't protect what you don't love. And so we're making a very strong 5-year commitment. And I expect that it's going to go longer because we're going to have the boat and we're going to be operational soon.
Amazing. So what sort of boat is it? And are you going just picking up kids from the local schools? And
This has been coordinated with the Ministry of Education, so it'll be built into the curriculum that they will have these opportunities to go. Right now, we're looking at a catamaran, in part because it gives us greater flexibility to reach certain areas. I think the Galapagos National Park is very well managed. And so we want to be able to give the kids the highlights. And at the moment, it looks like a catamaran is going to provide a reasonable number that we can carry at a time and be able to deliver it at scale.
oh, that sounds like such a remarkable project. And yeah, absolutely agree with you. You can't support it and love what you don't know. What an incredible opportunity for those kids. And yeah. So what are your future predictions for how travel is going to evolve in this area and generally, and why this area of philanthropy is so important? I mean, you've made some pretty important valid points about why how it's helping people. But what are your future predictions on where it's going to go? And do you think this is just something that will be and continue to be naturally built into the travel industry?
I sure hope so. I would love for this to be just the expectation and instead of the exception. But two main thoughts. One, I think post-COVID, there were a lot of people during lockdown who were at home imagining where they wanted to travel, but they also seem to have spent time thinking about how they wanted to travel. The number of requests that we have received, the philanthropy division, from travel consultants and tour operators is about building into itineraries, the visit to the school or the medical clinic, or how do we connect more with some of the host communities where we're going to send guests. It's been phenomenal. It's been a wonderful growth, and I hope that will continue. I would certainly say that post-COVID, that's been the case. But here's my real aspiration. Philanthropy is a learned activity, and for teenage kids to be exposed to the opportunity to make a difference in lives when they're traveling, their minds are open, and to do it experientially where they see the school and they see the 80 or 90 to 1 student-teacher ratio, they see half the kids without shoes, they get it and they feel it, and they actually will have that understanding through life. And so I almost take it like an obligation that when we've got family units that are traveling together, multi-generational groups, building into their experiences, the exposure, especially for teenagers and young kids, I see that as just a really integral part of what it is that we need to deliver. Much more so than a want, it's a need.
Oh, amazing. Gosh, it's been so interesting talking to you, and I could talk about this for hours, but we are unfortunately running out of time. So I'm going to ask you the question that we ask all of our interviewees, which is, what's the most bizarre thing that's ever happened to you on your travels? You're laughing, so you're making me laugh as I ask it.
I knew the question was coming, and it's hard to filter which one. I think that it's not so bizarre as much as it was lovely. So I lived in Egypt for a while, and they call it Khamsin when the desert storms come through and there's so much sand getting kicked up that you can hardly see. And so we were driving in the very southern part of the country by the Sudanese border and had to pull over for a period of time because there was just so much sand in the air, you just couldn't see the road. And out of the blue came a knock on the window, and it was a young Bedouin boy offering us tea. His father had seen us, knew that we'd pulled over. I didn't even see the tent where they were staying, and sent his son to come deliver some tea. And that to me is just the purity of that Arab hospitality. And I've always loved that moment. So maybe it's not bizarre, but it's certainly an exceptional moment.
Oh, it is bizarre and exceptional. Yes, absolutely. What a lovely gesture. Oh, look, it's been so great chatting with you, and we'll check back in as time goes on to talk about some of the other remarkable efforts that A&K is doing in this area and under your helm. And you're doing a remarkable job. So thank you for being on the show.
Pleasure. Very fun to visit with you on these topics.
I love the initiative to provide women with opportunities to lift themselves and their families out of poverty and how widespread it has become. And if you want to learn more, go to abercrombiekent.com/philanthropy. Our tip this week is from Smart Traveller about the top 5 passport mistakes you need to avoid. And quite possibly I've made them all. But first up, check your passport for damage. Even minor passport damage can stop you from boarding your flight or entering your destination. You could even be detained if the damage leads local authorities to suspect passport fraud. So before you travel, check your passport for signs like rips, marks, stains, or missing pages. I don't know how that would happen, but anyway, maybe toddlers around your passport. That is an absolute no-no. In particular, make sure the photo page and the machine-readable zone are free from damage. And always keep your passport safe, dry, and secure at home and while you're traveling.
Yes, definitely. That's definitely one to do. And we do actually keep ours all in the same spot. The whole family's passports are zipped up in a...
Don't say where they are. Don't let it go.
No, they're carefully zipped up in a pouch. They cannot be damaged because I have had the kids grabbing them out and when they were younger and bending them, buckling them, and then you've got them stuck under a book before you go away because you're so scared that you're going to get stopped at the airport.
Oh my gosh. Can I tell you a friend of mine about keeping your passport safe and dry and secure? Instead of putting it in the hotel safe, put it in remember those bum bag things, you wear them under your clothes, the flesh covered ones and tuck things. Yeah. So he put it there, went out clubbing for the night, sweated so badly, he actually wiped his passport clean and had to wait in New York until he got a new one. Yeah. Okay. Just thought I'd throw that one in there. What other things, Kirsty?
Also check the expiry date. So I mentioned once before actually that when my kids were really little and we got caught out on this one because being busy and all, and it was only 2 days before the 6 months expiry. So we had 6 months before it was literally dated. So it would have been 2 days beforehand. Before the 6 months. I still had almost 6 months on it is the point I'm trying to make. And we got to the airport and they were like, even though I had almost 6 months on it, except 2 days, they said, no, you cannot fly. So I had to go, and at the time we were on New Zealand passports, we're on Australian passports now, and I had to fly to Sydney to get a new passport to sit there and wait. And the whole family had to wait for me. And luckily they fast tracked it for us. But anyway, so check your passport expiry date is the point before you travel and make sure that there's always 6 months exactly and longer before from the date that you leave your destination?
Yeah, look, I think kid passports are a tricky one because unlike adults, they have only 5 years on them and you just forget the 10-year one, you keep an eye on it. But sometimes the kid ones just disappear and suddenly you're stuck with a kid that looks nothing like their baby photo. Another problem is having too many stamps. Not that might be considered a problem for some people, but if you travel overseas frequently, a passport may have a lot of visa stamps, and some countries won't let you in unless you have at least 2 to 4 blank pages in your passport. So that is another one that might catch you out. And also check for unauthorized stamps, such as souvenir or tourist ones. These types of stamps can make your passport invalid for travel if someone's going to get really tricky. So instead, get that Haute Lockery stamp, the one that everybody gets when they go down to Antarctica and you go to the post office there. Get it on a slip of paper that you can insert into your passport if you must need the stamp.
And apart from that, it's bizarre that you would put souvenir stamps in your passport. But anyway,
You get it. Some people are collectors. And also there's some countries as well that have arguments if you've got stamps in there, if they see stamps in their other countries too. If in doubt, you get it on a piece of paper, such as going into Israel, because Israel has always done that, has given you it, offered you the choice of getting a stamp in your passport or on a piece of paper so that it doesn't jeopardize your onward travel in the region.
And don't leave it too late to apply or renew your passport. So always make sure you've left enough time to get it. While most passport applications are processed in well under 6 weeks, some take longer. And of course, it just depends on the day and what's happening in the time. And it can change from month to month. And this includes first-time adult and child passports. And if you do need one really quickly, you may be able to use one of the faster processing services for an additional fee, which is what I had to do when I went up to Sydney.
I think we've all done that. And that fee is now, because we had a passport price increase recently, that fee is now $104 for a 5-day turnaround or a whopping $300 for a 2-day processing time. So at the base rate of $412, the Australian passport is one of the most expensive, is now the most expensive in the world. And the passport office says they're so expensive because of all of the high-tech anti-theft features built into them. And the last tip when you're applying to renew or get a new passport is don't fall for a scam. Make sure you use the official website, which is passports.gov.au. Scammers sometimes set up fake websites or send messages pretending to be from a trusted government department. If your identity is stolen or misused, you might need to cancel your passport, and that is one expense you don't need.
If you'd like to help support our production costs, you can buy us a coffee at coffee.com/theworldawaits so we can continue to bring you inspirational travel interviews with the world's best.
Next week, my guest is Lucy Pearson, bibliotherapist, library curator, and soon-to-be reading retreat host. We are talking about reading around the world, so if you are a lover of libraries, of books and travel literature, and even if you're not, tune in.
And if you're enjoying this episode, please give us a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts. Click on our profile, scroll down to the bottom to ratings and reviews. And if you're on Spotify, go to our main page and click the 3 dots underneath our photo, or simply drop us a line at hello@theworldawaits.au. We love nothing more than hearing from our listeners.
That's a wrap for The World Awaits this week. Click to subscribe anywhere you listen to your favourite pods.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.